Alright, disclaimer, warning, whatever you want to call it, there will be a gun in this video, and this video is a personal matter. It is emotional. There will be crying. There we go. So happy Sunday, everybody. As you can tell, it is noisy out. I wanted to do this video under like the circumstances of no noise, but that's not happening. So we're going to do this as best we can. I am going to be sharing a personal matter that occurred to me a couple of months ago, and this should have been done months ago. Due to weather changes constantly and just work and life, I didn't get to do it. So there will be crying, and like I said, there will be a gun, or there might be crying. I don't know, maybe I cried enough that I won't cry. But anyway, we're gonna get to the video in about a second because I've already lollygagged with this long enough. It's almost already like 11, and due to the fact that I have a firearm, I don't really want problems from my neighbors. So we're gonna get this started here in just a few seconds. All right. So one thing to note with this video is I was actually supposed to have an assistant who's supposed to be holding the camera the whole time. Unfortunately, I don't want to wait any longer, so I'm doing this literally all by myself. So the camera work is going to be a little bit janky. I think it makes it more personal as well. So to start with the video and some explanation, I am an empath, and if you don't know what an empath is, the best way I can describe it is we are people who can feel emotions, absorb emotions. We can be linked to people. I'm linked to very many people in my life. I absorb their emotions on accident sometimes, and I can read rooms pretty well. I can, there goes a truck. I can, you know, just, I feel a lot of stuff. I'm just in tune with something that most people don't have. So the actual story is a couple of months back, I went to go take a nap because I wasn't feeling very well. And I saw the warehouse. The dream was very obscure. A lot of people weren't very clear, but I was in the warehouse, or a version of it. People had their orange shirts. I couldn't make out faces. I could make out orange shirts and a bunch of clothing, and forklifts and this and that, but I couldn't make out faces. Then at one point, I turn and I see an Austro-Hungarian soldier. Okay. He looked like this. Like I said, I'm supposed to have a camera person, okay, but I don't. This is what he looked like. I recreated him in a game because I realized I could, and I needed to. And as you can see, he's got an M95, which is the rifle that I have with me, and I believe that's where the spirit was attached. He was attached to Anya. And I saw him standing there. So I confronted him like I would in real life. I would walk up and wonder what's going on. And the conversation is very blurry, because I don't think there was much of a conversation. Aside from the fact that he was smiling, he looked happy. Sure, why not? I thought this was a dream at first, or at least as far as I could understand. Then he handed me a ring. It's his ring. In it was inscribed his name, his first and last. And I couldn't read it. It was Slavic. It was something. And he kind of just stared at me. I kind of stared at him. I stared at the ring. I stared at him again. I do believe he muttered some stuff, but that part is very, very, like, I muttered stuff too, and it's very blurry. However, people were leaving. I guess like the shift was ending, or people were going to break or something. There was a horde of orange shirts just going towards the doors, the double doors that lead out of the warehouse. And he said, all right, I've got to go now. And I said, well, wait, what about your ring? And he said, don't worry about it. Keep it. We'll meet again in some city. My brain puts Sofia, but that doesn't make any sense for World War I because Sofia was Bulgaria's capital. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but I'm pretty sure it is the capital of Bulgaria. And that doesn't make sense because Bulgaria entered on the side of the Austro-Hungarians and the Germans and the Turks. the Ottoman Empire, so this doesn't make any sense, but he said something, I can't remember, but it started with a Z or something, and it was really hard. I don't know what front he was on either, but judging by what he was wearing, my thought was maybe it was the Carpathians, like the Winter Campaign of 15. Anyway, he turns to leave, and he goes through the double doors with everybody. I went to go Google his name. I went to a workstation, the closest workstations, which are the door group workstations, and I Googled his name. And Google had said that he was killed in action. And I remember just feeling extremely overwhelmed to the point that I figured out that I was crying in my dream, but I was crying while having it, because I came to with my eyes still clutched closed, but I could hear my PC running, I could hear the world around me, and I could feel tears just streaming down my cheeks, and I threw my eyes open and I burst into tears. And by what I gather from one of my friends who's a stronger empath than I am, years and years, is he had communed through the rifle when he established that I was a good person to give a farewell, in that the dream was his farewell and he was finally going to heaven or his afterlife or whatever, and that this was perhaps, the warehouse was my brain's representation of purgatory perhaps, or the middle ground, however you want to call it. And I've been thinking months and months about this, and it just shook me so many ways. For example, this is his rifle. I didn't see it well because she was slung on his, I believe he had her slung on his left shoulder. But this is the long rifle, the M95. This is my Anya. She is my most prized rifle. And the fact of the matter is, his soul was attached to this rifle. Because in 1915, they wouldn't have had a lot of the carbines, and even then, by the end of the war, they didn't have a lot. I own the carbine as well. And this is very likely that this is what his soul was attached to. This girl here. And yes, it's a video game, but he has the rifle as well. And I couldn't stop running through it about how many, what battles he could have participated in. Was it I feel like it's the Carpathians, which with the way that he was dressed, like the winter offensive in the Carpathians of 15 was a disaster. The troops were sent up with, and this part's gonna get heavy-ish with descriptions. The troops were sent up with almost no winter clothing in a place that had barely any good roads during the winter or when it rained. They had cardboard soles for their boots. They had barely any food. The Russians had them on the ropes. On top of this, they were being eaten by wolves, hungry wolves that were coming into their lines. Some of them were committing suicide by putting their rifles in their mouths because they were starving, they were freezing to death, they were miserable. And when I see his face, I can't imagine what that must be like. How horrible that must be. Doesn't mean my assumption is correct. He may not have been in the Carpathians. He could have been fighting somewhere where it was just a little bit cold and it was raining, but all the same, I was told that I should do a farewell with rest in peace written on a paper and burn it. That's why I have the rifle too. I'm also gonna make a Slavic dinner because I believe he was Slavic. The name was really hard for me to read, but it looked a lot like what I have on this paper. And I have it, rest in peace, in English, German, because the Austro-Hungarian Empire was extremely multicultural. Then I have Hungarian, and then I have Balto-Slavic, so Bosnian, Croatian, Slovenian, a bunch of them share that group. I have Czech and Slovak, Polish, Serbian, which, though the wording is the same as some of the other groups, such as up here, the way they write it is very different. It's more Cyrillic-y. And then Ukrainian is as well. It's the same. It's Cyrillic-y. It's very Cyrillic, right? Because they're closer to Russia in some instances. And it's like, what did you die for? Like, the Carpathians was a horrible campaign. They were trying to save Przemysl, which was a fortress that was surrounded by the Russians in 14. And the Austro-Hungarians had tried to break out to get out because they were surrounded. Konrad von Hötzendorf, who was the moron who was leading the Austro-Hungarian Empire military, or the empire's military, decided that sacrificing 800,000 something men to free 100,000 guys trapped in a fortress, not once but multiple times, was okay. So when I think about him, I can't help but hurt that his life was thrown away in an instance that didn't have to be. He was killed in a manner that didn't have to be. So, look, I'm not going to lie, I'm not crying as much as I did yesterday. Yesterday I did so much pre-crying because this was supposed to be done yesterday. Maybe I cried out all my tears and I'm also just so tired, but at least I cried a little. I'm probably going to cry later, and I bet when I've got energy I'm going to cry again. So, let's try this. Let's try not to set myself, the phone, or the rifle, or the blanket next to me on fire, or the other paper. I'm not very good with lighters, by the way. So don't really smoke. I'm not an open smoker. So. Hi. There we go. May you rest in peace, brave soldier. May you all rest in peace, brave men who were sent to war over something like in many wars that could have potentially been discussed. Yes, it was the killing of their archduke, rather, not their crown prince, but their archduke, but I don't think it had to turn into what it turned into. There was no reason for all the suffering and the pain that people were put through. There we go. So I folded it just because it is easier that way. Okay, I stopped the video because I kind of panicked there for a second, but no, we're good. I don't know how well you guys can see that because, again, I don't have a camera person, but that's about what I intended. Anyway, not exactly trying to have a disaster on my hands on this Sunday, although I think I'm definitely making a blooper reel of all the mess ups. My thumb is all thoroughly burned now. But yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to share with people. It's very personal. I mean, it shook me. Like I said, I cried a lot yesterday. There would have been more tears if this had been done when it was supposed to be done. But in some ways, perhaps this was the better way. Perhaps it was better that I didn't cry as much as I had maybe initially intended. But it does still affect me. Like, if I think about him when I'm at work, I start to cry. If I think about him even when I'm playing the games, I start, like the World War I series, I start to cry. Things. I remember, like, this is just such a big thing for me. It's such a big thing for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe not enjoyed it. It's such a Twitch thing to say. Hopefully you guys can understand. I had to share this because it was, and still is, a devastating experience for me. And that you guys will understand now why I listen when people come to me with their problems in the warehouse or in life, and I listen. Because I'm an empath, and it's just what I do. I listen. Plain and simple. Post video. One of the things you guys didn't get to see was that I had made a spot for Anya to lay this whole time. Again, this was supposed to go a little bit better than it did. This hasn't gone the way I wanted it, but I think it's better this way. I think this is pure, in my opinion. But yeah, she laid across these. You guys were there up against that stone that then eventually moved while I was having the trouble lighting the paper. So yeah.